Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Christine Andrews, and I serve as the director of the Equity First Summer Associates program here at Chapin Hall. I'm really glad you're here. The purpose of today is pretty simple. It's to help you decide whether this program feels like the right fit for you this summer. It's an informational space, not an evaluative one. So my goal is to be clear, honest, and transparent so that you can make a good decision for yourself. I'll go ahead and look at the next slide. Let me briefly introduce myself to you so you know who will be guiding you through this program. Um, I own my own strategic equity consulting practice called Ideas to Impact, where I specialize in culturally responsive and racially equitable research and evaluation. I've been doing this work for close to 20 years, primarily focused on children, youth, and families. I'm also an Equity First Fellow at Chapin Hall, which is how this program came to be. And here's what's important for you to know about my approach. I believe your PhD is not your ticket to just one destination. Yes, you can go into academia, but there are so many ways to put your degree into action through applied research, policy work, evaluation, consulting, and that's what this program is really designed to show you. So throughout the summer, I'll be your main facilitator, but you'll also hear from Chapin Hall staff who are doing this work daily, and we'll bring in some guest practitioners who are really pushing the boundaries of what equity-centered research looks like in the real world. Next slide, please. I also want to acknowledge a couple of my Chapin Hall colleagues who really helped to make this program possible. We have Anika Visahoya, who is our program director, and Janae Carpenter, our program manager. They are both deeply involved in the work behind the scenes, and you may interact with them during the summer. They bring a lot of care, a lot of thoughtfulness to how this program runs. So I wanted to make sure we acknowledge them in the room and they will be helping towards the end of our presentation today, where we open up the floor for questions. So to that note, I will be going through a few slides to give you a background and overview of what to expect for the summer. Um, and we want you to feel free to ask questions. As I said, this is really a set space for you to understand, is this the right fit for me for the summer? During the presentation, I ask that you just use the chat feature if you want to note your question so you don't lose it. I know how that is sometimes. I have to write it down. So if you want to use the chat feature and just write down your question, or you can hold it and we will wait to our Q&A session at the end. If you put it in the chat, it won't get lost. We are not going to address it in the moment, but we will bring it back up as we get to the Q&A session at the end. So we'll have an opportunity to give you a chance to bring your voice into the room and make sure your questions get answered. All right. So let me start by giving you a little bit of background on Chapin Hall. Um, Context about who Chapin Hall is and why this program exists here specifically. Chapin Hall is an applied research and policy center, and they focus on three main areas: ending youth homelessness, strengthening families and communities, and eliminating the need for long-term foster care. But Chapin Hall really is situated in a unique space, and it's why this program, the summer program, makes sense here at this organization. The experts here don't just conduct research for research's sake. They work alongside nonprofits, government partners to really center equity in systems and scaling evidence-based policies and trying to elevate community-driven solutions. So there's an explicit connection between research and real-world change. So that's the environment you're stepping into this summer, one where the research isn't just about publications, it's about actual impact on people's lives and specifically on policy. Next slide, please. So, why does this program even exist? The program exists because Chapin Hall was initially founded to address systemic inequities. And we believe very deeply that who is doing the research matters, and just as importantly, how the research is designed and implemented matters. We also know that a career in academia is not the only option for doctoral researchers, and many of you are thinking about how to use your training in an applied setting where you're thinking about policy, where you're thinking about community-centered spaces. At the core of this program is accountability. Who benefits from the research matters, and the communities that are most impacted deserve more than just our good intentions. We have an accountability to communities. Next slide. I want to walk you through how the program is structured. This is what we really deliver as a hybrid model in terms of it being partially in person and mostly virtual. We're going to have some scheduled weekly virtual calls, and that's going to look like content being delivered, right? I might be facilitating that, but I also am going to have sessions where Chapin Hall staff from different areas across the organization will be facilitating a session. I also like to bring in guest practitioners. I know that I am not good at all the things. I know what I'm good at. I stay in my box. But I have lots of friends and colleagues who have expertise in areas that I don't have. And so I'll be bringing in guest practitioners to also make sure that you have a well-rounded experience. So content delivery is going to be coming from myself. It's going to be coming from Chapin Hall staff. It's going to be coming from these guest practitioners, these guest speakers. Additionally, I want to make sure that you know this is not kind of a sit back and get it sort of session, sort of summer. This is really about application. So when I talk about these advanced applications as part of the weekly virtual calls, it means that we're going to be doing some breakout work. You're going to have some hands-on application. You might be looking at case studies. Um, you have a active, interactive component to this process. So that's also part of the weekly calls. And then lastly, in the weekly scheduled time together, we have deliberate time for peer work, for peer and cohort collaboration. Um, this is our third summer doing this associates program. And what we've learned every summer is how to iterate based on feedback. And one strong feedback that continues to come through is how much folks value the importance of having a cohort. This is designed to not just be a one-person fellowship, right? It is a summer program that is taking a cohort. So we want you to have intentional time where you're building relationships with these peers and that there's kind of more accountability in in that type of dynamic. So all of that is what you're thinking about with the scheduled weekly virtual calls, content delivery, advanced application, and time for deliberate time for peer collaboration. But there's going to be some unstructured time as well, where you have to do things outside of the scheduled virtual, Zoom call. And I'm calling that kind of independent study, right? There will be um, activities, homework, reading, outside work that you'll be asked to do in your own time. Um, we'll also discuss an capstone project. That's a huge part of this summer program, but it's not something that we are it's something that you'll be asked to work on in that unstructured time. And lastly, I think it's so important to be dedicated to having a reflection process. So you'll be asked to kind of journal and keep some outside reflections on your learnings and the questions that are coming up for you. So all of that is what to expect in the unstructured time. All right, moving on. I'm going to get even more details for you because I know schedules are important. And so I want you to walk into this eyes wide open. Again, we are going to have virtual calls Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That is what I was talking about with the content delivery, practical application, right? So on Mondays, we're going to meet from 10 to 12:30 p.m. Central Time. Again, lesson learned from our previous cohorts. This was a time that folks said, we're actually wide awake at this point in time. We met a little earlier in the past years, and folks were not too thrilled at that. So this is being responsive. So 10 to 12:30 p.m. Central is when we'll do our Zoom calls. And on Mondays, that's going to look like probably myself giving some content maybe the Chapin Hall staff member giving some content and then some application, right? Because it's 2.5 hours. No one's going to talk to you for 2.5 hours. On Wednesdays, similarly, you'll be getting additional content, but is likely going to be coming from our guest speakers that are really signed up to do Wednesdays. And then there'll be some Pride activity that follows. And then on Fridays, this is the time that is going to be purely dedicated to peer collaboration, structured time for you to work together on your projects, give each other feedback, to build community. That's what we're looking like for those weeks. So you can see here, we're starting the week of June 15th, and it goes through the week of July 27th. That's how we get to our 7 weeks. There are two times where we are going to have in-person um, experiences, and that is at the very beginning at our kickoff on June 15th. It's a Monday, and at the very end on July 31st will be our kind of culmination activity. On those 2 days, our group will come together in Chicago, and we will have an orientation and activities planned for a full day in office. And similarly, at the end, we'll kind of have some presentations, a celebration as we culminate the program. So I want you to see these dates and think about your calendar as, again, you're seeing if this is the right fit for you. The capstone project, I'll go into a little bit more detail, but know that this is an ongoing throughout the summer. So we will, at the very beginning, you're going to select which of the projects you want to do from the given options, and you will work on it in that unstructured time, sometimes with your peer collaboration times on Fridays as you give each other feedback. But you'll do a final presentation at the culmination on July 31st when we're in person. I will be offering office hours. This will be an optional sign up if you need it opportunity to ask questions, something you're struggling with, something in your current research that you have questions about. Um, where I'll have time slots available on Thursdays, likely from 10 to 2, where you will book a time and reserve it if you need it. If you don't need it, you don't have to come, right? I will show up if someone signs up. Um, that's kind of as scheduled. And again, this is the unstructured time that's also just ongoing. Regular independent assignments, doing readings. There'll be some self-reflection activities. You're working on your capstone project. You're keeping your reflection journal. This is how we are envisioning all how the 7 weeks will play out. All right. So now that you have your sense of the timeline, the dates, how we're using the time, let me share a little bit about what you're getting content-wise. Content-wise, we're assuming that you already have a foundation in equity concepts, right? This is meant to be an advanced. It's kind of like if you had Equity 101, this is the 201 class, right? With some 301. We really want to make sure that we are stepping up the content and the complexity. We're focusing on advanced positionality frameworks and how they actually show up in your research design, community-based participatory research, paying close attention to things like power sharing, being culturally responsive and inclusive, practicing racially equitable principles in your research, we also spend time on equity-centered data analysis, both quantitative and qualitative. So often folks think that equity work is really left to the qualitative folks if you're doing that sort of initial data collection, but really want you to understand that even if you're doing a purely secondary data set analysis, even if you're purely looking at a quantitative set, there's still ways to think about equity in that data analysis. So we'll spend some time making sure you leave with a good understanding of that. This isn't meant to be an exhaustive list by any means, but just wanted to give you a sense of the level and the direction of the work. So I keep alluding to this capstone project. It's really central to the program. You're going to select a summer-long project from a set of options, all of which are designed to be directly applicable to your dissertation or your professional work, right? So we're not going to give you, you're not going to be selecting something that's making you take on a task that's totally unrelated to something you're already doing. It's really meant to enhance what you are already thinking about and studying in your dissertation proposal or what you're conceptualizing to do in your dissertation. It's not something you'll be doing alone or just at the very end. We're really planning to scaffold it throughout the summer by having those peer feedback, having some checkpoints and support, and you'll present it during our final in-person session. So the goal is you can use the office hours that are optional to get consultation on it, working with your peers. I will give you an assessment rubric so you know how you're being assessed for this capstone project. The feedback that we've received in past years is that this is a really helpful way to put into application some of the principles and concepts that you're learning throughout the summer. Um, and have also taken good feedback and notes about the support and scaffolding that's needed. So I think that the way it's designed this summer will really be a supportive and scaffolded process so that this is something that you have as a very rich experience as part of your summer. So one of the biggest benefits past participants have named in in the summer cohorts is the professional peer network. You'll be in community with other doctoral researchers who are wrestling with similar methodological and ethical challenges in the work. Um, we know that you're going to really deepen your ability to apply racial equity principles, assuming that we'll do a cursory review of what these racial equity principles are. Our goal is to work on application. Um, we know that you're going to be able to build connections with some Chapin Hall researchers and policy staff as they come and present their work, and you're able to engage in them in interactive sessions. So those are going to be connections that you'll take away. This capstone project is really meant to be a meaningful and usable part of your summer experience. We want you to leave with a toolkit of resources and skills. It's supposed to really build your capacity of doing community engagement, data collection, analysis, um, just really trying to gain exposure to different research environments outside of academia. Um, and I do want to name the participants receive the stipend to really support your ability to participate fully in the program over the summer. Our goal, again, is to really make sure that you are developing very sophisticated frameworks for navigating equity in a context and in an environment where there are some tensions. So we really want you to leave with an enhanced skill set and some networks and peers and relationships that you can leverage outside of this work, outside of this summer. So you're listening and thinking timeline works. Okay, the content sounds good. This is our list of who should be applying for this. It's really designed for current doctoral students who are engaged in active research projects and have completed at least 2 years of their course of study. We're looking for applicants who have already demonstrated integration of equity principles in their research practice, some experience with community partnerships, have thought about or have been participating in community participatory action research. Again, it's not a sit back and get kind of summer. So we want you to be prepared for intellectually rigorous, sometimes being vulnerable, having those scholarly discourses where we are really tackling what our personal equity principles are and how we show up in our work, um, grappling with complex questions around, well, when is research just being extractive and not really benefiting communities? How do I interplay different power dynamics as I come in as the researcher and try to work with communities? And thinking about, I want my work to have impact beyond, research for research sake. So again, thinking about those policy implications or the implications beyond just the purposes of my research study. Um, so that those these are kind of the things you're thinking about. Is this the right program for me? This is who we think should apply. And as we've said before, um, this is a Chicago-based program. So we are looking for applicants that are Chicago-based or maybe in the greater Chicago area. But those two kind of in-person things are expected, the beginning and the end, and you will have to get yourself to Chicago for those meetings. So we want you to be Chicago based. Let me share about the application process. There is an online application. We can drop that link into the chat when you're ready, Anika. But there's an online application process. Um, you will see that it is asking some very basic demographic questions. It's asking some questions about your comfort with equity concepts and the application of equity. It's asking questions around your learning goals, right? So that's the online application. Um, we request that you upload a two-page, maximum two-page CV. And we also want you to respond to a prompt in submitting a video about yourself. So you will, when you get to the application process, you'll see the video prompt, and then you ask to upload a three, no more than 5 minute video response to that question. Trying to make the application process as not very cumbersome, right? We assume that you're already great writers, you're in a PhD program as it is. So we're not looking for, a lengthy, written statement by any means. So the online application is meant to kind of like click, click, click and get through. We really do not want any more than a two-page CV. Please do not submit a 8-page CV. We want a two-page CV. And even the video submission is really an opportunity to kind of express yourself in ways that maybe you're writing, maybe the application didn't give you an opportunity to share more about you. So just wanting to make sure that we cater to different styles. Some people show up better in writing, some people show up better on a video. So that will be kind of the phase one. And the deadline for the application is February 20th. Moving on to phase two, those that are selected as finalists from the initial application will be invited to do a 30-minute virtual interview. So we'll do a Zoom interview um, following the review of the applications. You will be contacted whether or not you have been advanced to the finalist round to do an interview. We hope to get out final decisions shortly after having the interview process. And then we are just reminding you about the start and end dates of the program. So that is our application process. And with that, let me see. I think my next slide is questions. Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to open the floor to see if there are any questions about what we've shared so far. Um, Feel free to use the chat or to come off mute and bring your voice into the room. We'd love to hear from you. Um, Again, my goal was just to be very clear and transparent about what the summer looks like, so you can make the right fit choice about applying. So I'll ask Janae, are there any questions already in the chat? And if not, just pop off mute and let's and make sure I get any questions answered.
Yes, awesome. Um, Halim says, thanks for hosting this. I was wondering if international students are eligible to apply for this program. So I'll turn that over to Anika.
Thank you for asking that question. So at this time, the program is open to those that are authorized to work in the United States on a full-time basis for the duration of the program and without having a need for future employment sponsorship. So that's our current program today. So I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Our next question from Melba. Are you interested in adult versus pediatric focused research projects?
You can take that one.
That'll be to you, Christine. Yep.
Um, we're pretty agnostic about what your research focus area is. I mentioned that my work is centers children, youth, and families. We talked a little bit about what Cape and Hall as an organization prioritizes in terms of the communities they
Mhm.
research with. For the purposes of the summer program, your research content area is not would not be a reason to not be admitted. We want to make sure that what we're offering is suitable for you, though, right? So I gave you a little flavor of the types of content we'll be going over. It is applicable to adults and children. So that's a choice for you to make.
Awesome. Love the questions coming in. Would you recommend doctoral students or doctoral candidates who'll be graduating by the end of the summer to apply for the program? And that'll be Christine. What do you, Nico, Christine?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. Over our previous 2 summers, we had folks across the stages of their PhD programs, and we definitely had students who were had already proposed, some who were in the process of collecting data, some who were, writing dissertations, some that were graduating and planning to defend that August at the end of the summer. I think it is the way the content is set up. I think it's beneficial regardless if you are towards the end of the program. We do want you to have some coursework under your belt, which is why we kind of said that 2 years, but it would be still beneficial, I believe, even if you are planning to defend at the end of the summer.
Awesome. You mentioned that there are options of summer projects. Do you provide a list of those options? That's you too, Christine.
Yeah, let me clarify that when I talk about a capstone project, I'm not going to say here are 3 research projects for you to uncover, for you to work on this summer. Instead, the capstones are really looking at um, more like a methodological challenge. It might be looking at ethical challenges within doing our work. You will be presented with 3 or 4 options of a capstone project. Choose the one that fits your work most closely, and we can, we'll have some back and forth on consultation about which project makes the most sense for you. But it's not a list of research projects that you're going to be choosing from. It's a list of uh, methodological applications. Like we really want you to put principles into action.
Perfect. I think now we want to invite Gloria to the floor. Gloria, feel free to ask your question.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So by active research, does that mean that you need to be working with participants directly? So I am in the MESA program at UIC, and that's largely quantitative and such. So I work, a lot of my research is with data sets that already exist, like from, well, when the government worked,
Yep,
but from previous. So does that mean that that wouldn't be allowed or counted as active research?
that counts for sure. Active research doesn't mean that you have to be actively in the community collecting data. I would still consider what you're doing. I consider secondary data set analysis as doing active research.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks so much. Continuing on our research path, which I love. Ms. Craig says, given the different research areas, how have past participants been able to network with intersecting research interests? That's a good one. What do you think, Christine?
Um, what I have found in all transparency in the past 2 years is that the students who were in the cohort tended to be in a social science field, whatever that looked like. And so because we are very deliberate and intentional about kind of the cohort and the peer collaboration spaces, participants have been able to, um, they're provided with opportunities where they find overlap in their work, whether it's because of a methodological approach, an underlying theoretical framework, um, and I think it's kind of been an organic process. I am not forcibly saying, like, here's, here's where you guys should be connecting on. But because the activities that we do as peers in that cohort work is intentional about really deciphering where you might be facing challenges in your dissertation and the ethical concerns around IRB with communities or giving incentives or, somewhere along the line, folks say, huh, I had a similar challenge. And those relationships, that networking seems to happen organically. Um, so I think that regardless of the research areas, um, folks have been able to find ways that they see some connection with others. It's not something I'm forcing, and we are research topic agnostic. I would just say that in the past, they have tended to be in a social science field.
Awesome. We'll switch gears for the logistics side of things. Anika, how many applicants are we accepting this cohort for 2026 cohort?
Great question. So we are actually planning to include 6 students in the program. It's a very close program and set up strategically that way to make sure you can learn and build from each other. And certainly, I know Christine can also talk about kind of the environment and atmosphere, but it is 6 students.
Perfect. And the last question I see, um, are we open to students who don't explicitly study race, but are interested in figuring out how to apply racial equity frameworks to their research? That's another good question.
Yes, you do not have to specifically be studying race to bring a racial equity perspective to your work. So the short answer is yes, you'd be open to students who are not explicitly studying race.
Perfect. And I did want to acknowledge Adisha's comment about including international students for future cohorts. Definitely thank you so much for that comment. And the team and I, we've actually been talking about what that could potentially look like for next year. So we will keep you posted. Perfect. Any other
Okay.
questions? Awesome. We want to thank each of you, Christine, Anika, and myself. Thank each of you for joining us this afternoon. We hope that each of you will consider Chapin Hall for spending the summer with us and applying for the program. And we look forward to reviewing your applications. If anything shall come up while you're working on your application, feel free to email us. And I'll put Anika and our emails in the chat. Christine,
Or
anything you
Janae,
want
we
to
can
add, or
put
Anika?
We can
we can
put
put
equity
the
first.
Yes.
yes. Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
If you want to put the equity first email address in the chat, if you email that, it actually comes to all three of us. So
Yep.
um, that would be probably the
Done.
quickest way to get any of your questions answered. And earlier in the chat, there was the link for the application or the project page, which can take you to the application. Um, so please feel free to utilize that. February 20th is when we are closing applications.